All right, we will go ahead and start here. So that everybody's aware, everything we're going to be talking about will be from version 8 of Cabinet Vision. So we're on version 8 now from this point going forward. Other than old jobs that exist on version 7, we'll still honor those ones. But anything new, you want to start in version 8. So first, we'll just start basic bare bones layout of Cabinet Vision. The screen at right now is the screen you'll see when you first open Cabinet Vision. When I refer to the slash screen, that's what we're looking at here with this big green box in the middle of it. There are a couple of buttons on each of these screens I want you to become familiar with, not just the button, but what we call the button. So this first one is the solid button. Some people call it the planet button also, but this is where you'll basically, from the splash screen, that's about everything you access is the solid button. This is just to start new jobs or open existing jobs. There's also from this screen a preferences menu. In the preferences menu, you can change certain parameters for your own system, company name, address, all of that kind of thing. Measurement units is another area that you might alter. You can do the precision of both your imperial and your metric units instead of default unit. Most of you know that you can switch on the fly in Cabinet Vision, so you can be drawing in inches and convert to millimeters to send to us, or vice versa. You can or just millimeters. Anyway, most of these are options you will not use. Basically set up into our catalog, so it doesn't really matter what else you select in there. So really, user and measurement units are all you'll access from this preferences menu. Every once in a while, we'll have need to access this door catalog, but that's not very often. So, and we'll address that when the need comes. But the other on here that I want everybody to be aware of is the help button. I know that it's sort of explanatory, but Cabinet Vision's help menu is much better than most software's help menu. If you have a question, you want to know how to do rollouts, I can go in here and find that question, and it will give you all kinds of. There's tons and tons of information. There's something like 3,000 or 4,000 pages worth of information in this menu. So become familiar with it when you get a chance. If you have questions, reference that first, and then if you can't find your answer, you can call us always. So help menu. This then we're just going to start a new job. So because you can do that, you can click on the icon up here, or you can go to your solid button and hit new. So I'm just going to start a new job. When you start a new job, you will come up with a job properties window right out of the chute here. Our catalog is a little different than most catalogs in Cabinet Vision. Ours is what's called a modular catalog, which means that it goes from designing to pricing to manufacturing all in one. So a lot of these buttons here are only for non-modular catalogs. So when you're using Cabinet Vision for our catalog, you won't even access any of these. Really, the only two things on here that we have a couple of things you'll need. The job, it says number. Really, that's the job name. It's the Jones residence, or however you want to call it. If you want to call it by a lot number or the bill name or whatever you want to refer to that job name is what we refer to it here internally as. If you use a purchase order number for billing purposes, enter that there. The next section, description, you can put whatever you want in there. When the job comes to us, we may override that and put a number on our end. We use that field for internal tracking purposes for our time tracking. The thing that can be used but is not required is all of this customer information. If you want to have that information for your own records, it is helpful to us as well to know where it's going, that kind of thing for shipping purposes. So I encourage you to use this, but it's not required. So once those things are entered, though, that's all we really have to do to start a job. So I'll just click on this OK button, and that puts us into the job. Give a basic rundown on the screen layout in cabinet vision, I pointed out a couple of buttons in here. You have your snub up here in the corner. That's similar. There are some different options when you're within a job, and we'll show you that here in a little while. You've also got a quick access toolbar that is up here on the top of your screen here. You have ribbon tabs here that will change the ribbon, and the ribbon bar is the other menu you'll need to become familiar with. Ribbon bars are text sensitive, so depending on what mode you're in, the buttons along this bar will change. The Utilities tab, not very often that many of you will ever have to access anything here. Occasionally somebody might want to import a Google SketchUp model, and we'll cover that on a later day, but that's about the only thing from this Utilities tab that you'll probably ever use. Most of your stuff will be coming from the main tab. So ribbons across the top. These belong here are your view tabs. You can plan animation, 3D reports, and drawings. Most of you, well, all of you, you will not see the S2M center. That's only on my computer. That's how we will transfer your order to manufacturing to our CNC machines and computerized saws. So, but you should see all of these other buttons. Anything over on the side of your screen is called the sidebar. This is all context sensitive. Depending on what you're doing, you'll see different buttons and options on the sidebar. At the bottom of the screen, there's a favorites bar. It is that these will all be blank, but you can drop cabinets that you use repeatedly or wildcards you use repeatedly on there, and able to have quick access to them. The only downside of that is that all you're seeing is a generic icon here. You have to hover on it to see what that actually is, a base cabinet versus a BD1 cabinet. So you can customize this to however big you want. You can fit, I forget, it's 20 or 30 icons that you can have down there, but it might get a little overwhelming with too many. Another button is your measurement units. Things that you can do here, if you click on the arrow, you can change between millimeters and inches. If I click on the unit here, I can change precision of that unit. I typically have mine set really accurately in millimeters. In inches, I typically go to 16ths. I know there's some people that like going to 30 seconds. Have others that like everything rounded to 1/8 of an inch. So it's total user preference on that. And you can change on the fly between jobs. It's not anything universal. You'll have your system defaults, but you can change it whenever you want. Most of these buttons here are snap buttons, and we'll cover those at a later time. But your snap options are here. Other than that, in your screen, a couple of relatively significant buttons. These ones are standard Windows: minimize, maximize, and close. And then your file button isn't used very often. It basically can alter the color of your screen. Is about it. So that is the basics. Does anybody have any questions at this point? Right. Let's see. I can get right into drawing a job here then. It takes a little bit to get the background and foundation built here to be able to start actually dropping cabinets on walls. There's some concepts that you need to understand first. And in vision, every cabinet will be connected to a wall. And so it will always require us to draw walls first before we draw any cabinets. Now you'll notice here all these other buttons are grayed out except add button, but it will let us get access to the objects until we have walls drawn. So I can either click on the button or hit the F2 button to be in the wall mode. Watch my ribbon bar at the top. When I click on the walls, my ribbon bar changed. So did my sidebar. menus. Now I've got different options here. In your wall drawing, I need to cover each of these little groups up here kind of independently. We're going to start on the over here and work our way back. Most of it are pretty self-explanatory. Line is just to draw an individual wall, and it lets go at the end. A chained line has multiple walls and continues being attached every time I draw a wall. At the end, I've still got this tail sticking here, so I can just tap my escape button to let go of that wall. A line box is just what it says. I never actually even used that one. It seems a little overly simplified. So, and arcs, I typically do not use these either, just because they get a little bit confusing. You can put an arc in radius. I'll just show you these so you can see it's a little hard to control. 3-point arc, same kind of a thing. Little bit tricky to control. And a cord, if you measure on a job site and you know you have X amount of space from corner to corner of the wall and where your cord length or cord position is, and then your cord length, that one's probably the easiest one to control. But if I do have to do a curved wall, I typically don't use this tool, although you can if you want. Typically what I'll use is back here on this modify section, I'll use a bend tool. So just click bend and then grab a wall and bend it out to whatever size I need it to be. But either one works. Notice on the modify tool, I do not have access to most of these. They're grayed out. I can access bend right now, and that's all. If I click on my select tool, pick an individual wall, and now I can get access to the delete option, so I can delete a radius wall. If I click on a wall and hit delete, it will click out. I can also select a wall and hit the delete key on my keyboard, and it will delete the wall. Another way of getting rid of walls, if I'm in the wall mode, I'm still in the wall mode with these wall tools, I can draw a box around multiple walls and hit my delete key or hit the delete button on the ribbon bar. The other buttons along here are grayed out no matter what I'm doing with my walls, and that's because they're only available from a different layer. When I say layers, this is the option you have in a wall mode for layers. I can pick actually drawing walls, or I can pick construction lines. And this is a underutilized part of the program, I think. A lot of people don't know about it or don't use it. Sometimes when you're laying out a room, let me come in here and delete some walls, and I'll show this a little easier. If I've got a room layout like this, I want to position an island in the center of this room. Sometimes it's a little difficult to know where to start and stop those lines because my cursor is just kind of free floating out here. I can use construction lines, and now I have access to all these other tools. I can put a line in there and draw it out. So I want to be 4 feet out here. Notice over on my left sidebar, I've got some parameters there, and one of them is length, and you can see that length is highlighted yellow. If you see a parameter that's highlighted yellow, that's the default parameter, so I can just start typing, and I'll just type in a dimension here, 4 feet. So put in a construction line, which is basically a guideline. So now if I went back to my walls, I could then draw a line and connect to the end of that wall and position my wall where it needs to go. That's what construction lines are used for. There's lots of other tools here. We won't cover very much of them, but offset lines, you can move that line. You can join used for putting a fillet or a chamfer on the edge of a line. Bend is just what it sounds like. Trim, if you have two lines intersecting, you can trim the tail sticking out the other end. Transform, you can rotate or mirror different lines. Crop will crop everything outside of the box I draw, like that. So you can play around with these a little bit and get more use of them. One note about construction lines, if I go back to my wall mode, they are still there, but if I go and hit my return button or tap my escape key, it will put me back to my main menu here. Notice my construction lines disappeared. If I go back to my wall mode, those lines are gone. They're only temporary lines that are only visible while I'm in this instance of drawing walls. If I exit out, they're gone. So a couple of things with drawing walls. Notice from the room here, I've got before on the wall setting. If I click on select, I could just drag it around. It knows that I'm in the wall mode, so it knows I'm only selecting walls. So I can delete or I can also move a group of walls like this within a room, or I can just move an individual wall within a room. I can also use this button to offset a wall, so I'm only moving it in that one direction. Let's see. I'll cover resizing and things here in a minute, but what I want you to watch is in the wall mode. If I'm on the select key tool, I can pick any wall drawing and delete or move or change its size. Once I escape back the main room, the standard tool set, if I click or if I draw box around these walls, it doesn't pick anything. It doesn't know I'm trying to pick walls. If I did, then there were cabinets on the walls, it would be selecting cabinets. So if I want to delete walls from this view, I would click on one wall. Now it knows I'm talking walls, and then I can draw a box around all of them. So you have to select a wall first and then draw a box. So I'll just delete all of those and start over here. Let's see. I didn't really talk about how these walls are drawn. If I pick up any of these line tools, I move cursor anywhere on the screen that I want to start a wall and click one time with my left button, drag whatever direction I want, and then click again to finish that wall. And I'm chained line, so it's going to continue around here. Now, one thing to notice is the bar. As I move my cursor around, you see the angle change, you see the length, and the X and Y change. So if I want to do a wall at a specific length, I can drag this out. That gets kind of tedious, especially when I have 3 decimal points on a millimeter here. But you can type in the length you want because that's highlighted yellow in the length on the sidebar. I can type in 2438, which is 8 feet, and push her, and that finishes that wall. And now I'm on to my next wall. Another thing I can do is if I'm going this direction, I can look and see at my angle as it changes. Notice minus 22.5. There's a minus 35. So if you think of angles in drawing walls, straight to the right is 0, and then it goes counterclockwise from there, just like on a protractor. Goes around the 360 degrees. So if I'm drawing out and I want to draw a line up here at 45 degrees, anywhere I can type. Let's go 1220 with 4 feet, and I'm going to push my tab button on my keyboard, which will make me go from the length cell down to the angle cell. Now I can type in 45. Now see my cursor jump to there. If I hit enter, now it puts that wall exactly where I need it to go. So you can size walls exactly the way you want them. Other thing to note in any sidebar parameter within the program, if you don't know exactly the length of a wall, but you have plans from an architect and you know there's a certain amount of cabinets, I'm going to switch over to inches here real fast. You know that as I draw this wall, I don't know the final length, but I know the length of each of the individual cabinets on that wall. Other than add it up on a calculator, in any cell in Cabinet Vision, I can say I want a 24-inch cabinet plus a 36-inch cabinet plus another 24 plus a 12. And it will math in these cells. You can multiply, divide, add, and subtract in those cells. So let's hear another important thing about wall drawing is when you draw the walls. Notice when I draw a wall, I'm going to click on the left and drag to the right. Notice where that little square origin point is, right on the end of the wall here. That's the face of my wall. This front, the bottom line of this wall is the face of my wall. Notice my dimension line comes out the back side of my wall. If I start on the right and drag to the left, dimension line is out here. So you want to all draw your walls clockwise around a room, or if you're looking at the face of the wall, from left to right. Left to right, left, right, if I was looking at the face of the wall. If you draw backwards, it's not the end of the world. The problem will have confusion in cabinet dimensioning, because all of the automatic dimensioning will come out here in front of your cabinets that are attached to these walls. So it's just always best to go clockwise around the room. A couple of things with just pointers on laying out rooms. Along with going clockwise, I always recommend that you keep the opening of your room towards the bottom, if there is an opening, towards the bottom of your screen. What you won't want to do is draw your walls like this and put cabinets on this back side. It's okay to do that. You'll still be able to see them. Everything's fine. Where it will give you a problem is when you go to 3D, your default will be looking at the back of that wall, and then you have to spin the whole room around. I always just recommend to build your rooms with the openings facing down if there is an opening. Another thing I've found over time is to lay out your room in a landscape view. If you've got a widescreen monitor, particularly, you'll be able to see more of the room at once. So even if the plans from the architect show it oriented lengthwise, sometimes it's easier in cabinet vision to see it landscape view. In 3D, you'll definitely see that will become important. Speaking of 3D, another thing is, depending on, you'll see in the middle of my screen, I've got these blue crosshairs. That is actually my grid. If I zoom way out, I've got a grid showing on my screen. I set my grid as very large. If I right-click in the background of my screen and say Properties, I can go right here to my grid spacing, and I've got mine set at 1,200 inches. It's just kind of arbitrary, but and I say that the grid is always visible. If I turn the grid off from being visible, lose that blue crosshair in the middle. I can always turn it on by turning my grid back on down here. But typically I like to have the grid always visible and set it really big. If I set it really small, it gets kind of overwhelming and busy in here. I don't know many people that actually draw with the grid in plan views. But you're welcome to if you'd like. This blue hair is important. You'll notice compared to the rest of the grid, the rest of it's white. This crosshair is important because that's the center of your 3D camera. So what's important is to build your room around this center, because that will dictate where your 3D views will be drawn from. If I'm off center, if I turn that grid off and I don't know where my center point is, and I end up drawing a wall clear over here, notice I'm just way out. Those walls are a long ways away from center. If I go to 3D, I can't see it. Where is it even? It's hard to find. If I, let's see, select those walls and move them over here closer to the vision point, I should be able to, let's see if I can zoom out. There's in bird's eye view. But notice how it things around me really kind of weird, and there it starts to chop off part of the room. That's because of that location in the room. So I always want to take this, the room layout, and try to build it around the center of a room. Now in 3D, I can get a lot better here, and actually be able to zoom and pan and do all the things that I need to do. So if you happen to draw a wall or a room and it's not exactly centered, I always recommend after drawing a wall, you just go up here to Modifications and then pick Center Room, and automatically center it for you. And that'll give you your optimal viewing for 3D mode, and it's just easier in plan as well. Let's see, raising walls. Let me delete these and start over again here. If I have some new walls, and I'm just going to kind of eyeball it right now, a rough layout, and escape off of my wall tool. By the way, that escape, you can either use your escape button on your keyboard, or you can use the return arrow. some of you with your mouse that has multiple buttons or programmable buttons on it. I always program mine to have a thumb button be escape, so then I just tap my thumb button and it brings me back off of my wall tools. It's just a fast, convenient way of doing it. Wall sizing. Notice that these walls are all joined together. They show miter joints. Most of the time, if I resize a wall, those joints will stay connected. Every once in a while, you'll move something in a way that Cabinet Vision doesn't understand what you were trying to do, and it will break one of those joints. So you'll have to kind of just play with that. It's not something you just have to get a feel for it. Also, if you click on one wall, you can always come up here to the sidebar parameter and change its length after the fact. So I can change that to 36 inches. That wall, let's change it to 120 inches. And this wall will go 48 inches. See how that works. And then I changed how this thing's configured so I could come back up and recenter my room, and it moved those walls back around my center. Sizing, again, we already talked about deleting. I can just click on an individual wall if it's wrong or in the wrong position. I don't really want a wall, just hit my delete key to get rid of it. Go back to my wall tool here. Let's see, we talked moving walls. Moving walls that are connected can pose a bit of a problem, though. If I already connected these walls and I want to move this wall back, I can use this tool right here, but a lot of times that's going to break my connection. Just like that, if I do that, and I go, oh, shoot, that's not what I wanted. So I'm going to bring it back down there and snap to that. Once it gets down there, it automatically reconnects. If I really wanted to move that wall back and make this line longer, I would probably just want to click on that wall and make it longer, rather than move an individual wall that's linked to an adjacent wall. You can move walls by themselves just fine by clicking on that wall, clicking in the center and moving it around freehand, or you can use this to move it parallel to the existing wall. Handles on the ends of walls can be used for resizing walls. So if I grab that, I can either drag it out to whatever size I want, or I can, again, type in the dimension, and it will jump to that size. It expands the direction I'm pulling that. So whichever way I'm going, and I type in the new wall length, it knows to follow my cursor. See, hatching. Most people don't fiddle with this too much, but some people like to. If you've got all selected, you can also change this as a default setting, but I can change if I wanted to look at solid walls or a hollow line. You can make it show studs, which I'm sure are perfectly accurate. And you can change that kind of a thing in your layout. Come back here and draw a few more walls again. Now, there are several different types of walls. What we've been doing up to this point is just a standard wall. If I click on my line tool over here, I've got style. I can pick standard or peninsula, cathedral, vaulted left, or vaulted right. The cathedral, vaulted left, and vaulted right are pretty self-explanatory. I don't use them terribly often, but a lot of designers like to show the way that the ceiling's vaulted. You can control how high it is at the peak or where the peak is located at, if it's vaulted left and right, those kinds of things. So we won't really cover that today, but you can play around with it and see. It's pretty self-explanatory, intuitive stuff. So peninsula wall is a little confusing to people, though. If you pick a peninsula wall, notice the standard walls I've drawn have thickness to them, whatever I've set my standard wall thickness to be. If I draw a peninsula wall out here, again, I want to draw from this island I'm drawing here, so I'm going to have cabinets on this side of the island, so I want to start on what is the width of the island if I'm looking at the face and drag to the right, the wall's up down. So notice that this peninsula wall is yellow and it has zero thickness to it. What you do not want to do is draw a standard wall. I'll pick a wall tool, and if I want to do an island but I don't want any wall thickness to it, if I draw a standard wall out here and then click on that wall, I could change its thickness to 0 if I wanted. That wall's still there. The problem is that wall, if I can get here to center of my room. There we go. Hard time even seeing it there. Problem with this wall, a peninsula wall, I can click on it very easily and move it, resize it, change things. This wall there, I just happened to snag it. A lot of times it's very difficult to click on that wall. So I'm going to hit that wall and delete it. So peninsula walls are useful for peninsulas if you've got it coming off of a written wall and you just don't want to see the thickness of the wall. Very useful though for islands. There are other applications for them, but it's basically a place for you to snap cabinets to without having to have a visual wall. And when you go to 3D mode, you won't be able to see a peninsula wall. So a wall type that is important is a wall end. If I click on one of these end walls here, over here I can pick a wall end and I can check that box. Notice I didn't have to click right on the check mark. I could check anywhere inside this box to turn that to a end. Same here. Other than it turning the wall green, what a wall end does, two things. It will help prevent a cabinet from trying to attach to this wall. When I get a cabinet close to this corner, sometimes it wants to turn and attach to this wall. The other thing a wall end will do is when I go to my elevation views, it will bypass any wall ends, so you don't have to cycle through a bunch of blank walls that you don't really need to be looking at. So that's a wall end, and I would encourage using those whenever you can. It does make your drawings a little cleaner. Other things that are important on the wall, individual wall. Notice over here I've got a wall height, so I can customize wall by wall what the height is. I've also a soffit height, and this is a little misleading to some people. A soffit, most people think of the ductwork or something being covered by sheetrock or plaster or something hanging down from the ceiling. In this case, that's not what it is. What soffit is in cabinet division is the line at which upper cabinets will snap to. It always snaps the wall cabinets to your soffit height, and if you change the height of a wall cabinet, it will extend that wall cabinet down, not up, which is not how you typically want it to go. That's how cabinet vision. So that you can also change the thickness of a wall at any point. You can change an individual wall if you've got a big, thick log wall or something like that you're trying to illustrate. There's all kinds of things you can do with that. Again, you can the length or the angle of a wall. These positions up here have to do with this wall's relationship to the crosshair here in the center of your center 3D camera point. I'm not going to really talk about those in depth here, but you can kind of play around with them, see how they react. Another type of wall is a TWall. Sometimes, let me delete these and draw a new set of walls here. You'll have a long wall with a wall extending out in the middle of it. Sometimes that's a full wall. Sometimes it's a bar peninsula wall type of an application. Some people try to make a small segment here and then another wall segment over here, to where they're two separate, like this. Okay to do, other than the fact that when I go to elevation view, if I have cabinets along this whole run, I'll only see the cabinets on this wall's elevation when I look at that wall. I'll only see the cabinets that are attached to this wall when I look at that wall's elevation. So you typically don't want to do that application. But when you go to a T-wall that you want to float somewhere in the middle here, if I try to click on this wall, it looks like it hasn't done anything. But if you look over in the upper left corner, clearance, it's trying to attach to this wall. What it's asking me is, where do I want this wall in relation to the wall it's attached to? So I'm going to call it 60 inches there on the left. Now it's over to 60 inches. Now I can drag that out and put my T-wall in. The nice thing about doing this is that now if I go to the elevation view of this wall, I can see the T-wall plus I see the cabinets that are attached to both walls, rather than if this we're drawing as a wall, and then this is a separate wall. Walls are really handy. I'll delete those. One thing we didn't talk about when we set up our room is the room layout. In my room, I've got it set as 96-inch walls as a default. But when I start a new job, or access this from this button here, from the job button, I can go to the cabinets and then layout tab, and I can change what I want. In this case, it's just talking about cabinets. I'd have to go to my room layout, actually, for what I'm talking about. Layout tab. Here I can change for this room my standard. So let's say I want in this room 120-inch wall heights with a 24-inch soffit height. And I say OK. So now if I start to draw walls again, I escape out of there and click on a wall. Now my wall is 120 inches with a 24-inch soffit. So whatever I have put in as my room default will draw all the walls that way. So when I set up a room, I like to go to the room button first and change my layout tab to whatever I want, particularly the height and the soffit height. The thickness you can adjust if you want to, but usually I adjust these two. And you can also set it as your system default if you want it to always bring up that size. Another thing that's pretty common for people to try to do in Cabinet Vision is combine rooms together. For instance, if I have 2 or 3 bathrooms that all have the same door style and finish and everything else, I might draw walls, something like this. Okay to do. It gets a little bit hard if you ever want to see a 3D image of it, because you're going to see these 3 rooms. But it's also more difficult to keep your rooms straight. So I would always recommend treating that as one room, that as one room, and that as another room, not to combine them together. So let's see. I think that's the basics of the wall drawing. Is there any questions anybody has at this point on drawing walls? Not seeing anything pop up here, so let's go ahead and replace a couple of walls here around a room. And it's not centered, so I'm going to go up and say center room. So there, it brings me in a little closer. Let's see. We're ready to access the Davis Millen catalog. We're not quite going to put cabinets on the walls yet, because there's one important step that happens first. On a modular catalog in Cabinet Vision, which ours is, if I click on our catalog, the first thing that's going to pop up is it's going to ask me all of room specs. At the beginning, when we started a new job, we saw tabs here that I told you we would just disregard because ours is a modular catalog. In a non-modular catalog, they would use these to set their room specs, but we use that in ours. In ours, when we access our catalog from here, it will, the first time you do it in a room, it will pop up this window. So to just quickly, most of you have seen this already, but I want to talk about a couple of points on this, because you want to make sure every time you start a new room to pick the specifications you want for that room. A couple of things are important to know, though, under cabinet materials. If you have 2 things listed there divided by a slash mark, the first one is your exterior wood, the second one is your interior. So in this case, it would be cherry veneer exterior with natural maple melamine interior. Pretty self-explanatory. It can get pretty confusing because I forget the exact number, there's 400 or 500 of these options in here. And basically, arranged in groups. So the first group is your standard woods with standard interiors. Then we have wire brushed woods with standard interiors, recomposed veneers with standard interiors, reclaimed woods with standard interiors, and bamboo veneers with standard interiors. Now, this is an exception to the rule I just spoke about the exterior and the interior. A melamine exterior/interior means that this is black melamine throughout, inside and outside. There's no slash and something after it. So if you ever pick one of these, it's the same inside and outside. Your finished ends will be melamine. A lot of times used on garage cabinets or pantries or those kinds of things. But what is some textile melamines with standard interiors, and then we have melamine interior, exterior, the same as the ones I had above there. So I'm going to scroll down this pretty quickly here. Now I'm to the custom interiors. A lot of times we get asked to do materials that we have done in a very long time. Sometimes we get asked for things to do that we've never done. When things come up, rather than us have to make a big change to our catalog and to send a new catalog update out to you, we pick a custom wood. And what happens in that case is you will call us, say, hey, I've got this special interior we want. We can look up the pricing and say, oh, that's a $100 sheet kind of material. Well, that would be alder/custom interior 100. The first to the per cost of that material. Now, in this case, we're talking custom interiors. If I continue to scroll down, here's claimed recomposed bamboos with custom interiors, then some custom melamine, same interior, exterior. Now I've got standard interiors with custom wood exteriors. So the same thing happens here, but this number is referencing the cost for the lumber. So it's $2 or $4 or $6 a board foot for that lumber. If it's a solid wood kind of product, if it's a veneer only or a laminate kind of product, you would scroll down here to custom panel, and now this is a per sheet cost again. All of the things, we don't have anything set up where you can just look up if I want teak veneer. I don't have a cheat sheet or anything like that you can look at to determine what factor teak veneer should be. You have to call us and we look up that current price on that wood. We don't keep the tabs on all of those things. So hopefully that all makes sense in the materials list. I'm just going to go ahead and pick alder with natural maple and base layout. Where these at a different time. 99% of the time you're going to want to select Euro for your room. Even if you're doing a face frame job, you'll want to select Euro for your room. We're going to use overrides on individual cabinets for the face frames. That sounds a little silly to do it that way, but and we'll show at a later time why that's important. But you'll almost always want to pick Euro from this menu. Your finishes, these are our standard finishes. Well, you start with the natural unfinished, and then your simplicity finishes, then your express finishes, your harmony or echo finishes, spectrum, and just down the list here. The same thing for finishes as custom wood. Sometimes you'll have a custom matched finish. We'll give you a factor at the time we match the color, and we'll say, oh, it's a custom 10 or a custom 12, and you'll put in that factor, and that will be for pricing. It doesn't necessarily tell us what finish you've chosen. There's another place we can spell that out, but for price purposes, that's what this factor does here. So in this, I'll just pick a simplicity glaze only finish. Top coat, just how shiny or glossy your top coat is. These do go up slightly in price. It's a very small change price when you change. Most of what we do is flat, but flat satin and satin have become a lot more popular recently, so you can pick whatever you'd like there. Distressing, there are three options here. None, yes, are the two standards. Pretty self-explanatory here. None is no distressing. Yes is our basic simplicity distressing. If you look at your simplicity color blocks, the dressing that you see on those color blocks is what standard distressing is, or a simplicity door. If you have something custom, though, you pick custom. Now, this doesn't do anything for pricing other than tell us that you want something custom. We'll cover the custom distressing here in a little while, but for pricing purposes, none or yes standard, both of them are a zero price edition. We don't charge for the addition of distressing to it as long as it's standard distressing. If you go to custom, then it becomes sort of an a la carte you're paying if you want nicks and dents and cracks, but if you don't want wormholes, you're not paying for wormholes. So by picking the custom, you'll typically have an increased cost over even the standard, because yes, standard is a no charge. So I'll just pick none for now and go past this to drawer boxes. Now, drawer boxes, there's a lot of options here. Probably 85% of what we do is a dovetail maple with tandem blue motion guides on it. So that's typically the one to pick there. Banding, again, there's not a price difference between these two. You just have your option if you like PVC banding to match your wood doors, or finished wood banding to match it exactly. So it's up to you. C tends to be a little more durable, but the wood we get a better color match on. So it's designer preference on that. Doors, these are pretty nondescript kind of names here. You'd have to look in the door catalog to see what each of these peg nomenclatures mean, but show graphically and price those different types of pegs that you pick. Same panel details. Some of these are kind of nondescript. BB1 is a beadboard center panel. VG66 is a V-groove that are on 76 millimeter centers or 3-inch centers. The CF, CSW, and OFL are sort of specialty treat to panels, and they're only available on certain panels, the C panel or the O panel. These ones up here are only available on flat panel doors, and we'll cover those another time too. So I'll leave this one on none for now. Mods, drawer front mods, drawer box mods, and rollout mods. All these is pricing up charges, and essentially it's a number of hours per door that we're going to upcharge you. If you have a really complex door that doesn't exist in our catalog, but we have a door that's very similar to it, but you want some new treatment, a carving or something done to that door, you need to custom. We'd say, oh yeah, that's fine, we can do that. However, you need to put in a 0.5 door. That will add a half an hour labor to every door on the job. Is how this calculates. But typically you'll just ignore these last four. But if you have something weird, talk to us and we'll tell you what mod to put in there. So that's your basic options list. All the different selections we can make. So once we've gone through each of those, now I can hit the next button. Now this takes us to our door properties. This window can be a little confusing to new users of the program. I always want to start at the top of the screen and work down. In this case, that's not the case. We want to start over here and work down, and then we're going to go up to the top. So as I open my base style, this is for my base cabinet doors. If I open that, it gives me a list of all the doors, and there's, I forget, 300 or 400 selections in here. And notice the top group is a named door. These are the simplicity doors, the most inexpensive doors in the catalog. So if I pick one of those, a Bainbridge raised panel, for instance, is a fairly common door. When I pick my base door name, it's going to determine what drawer fronts are available. So right now I only have a Simplicity block drawer front, or a Bainbridge, which is a matching raised panel drawer front, or this one is a matching raised panel drawer front with wide rails, meaning it's got the same size rails as a door. This one would be a narrower. It's a little hard to see with this color in that drawing. You probably can't see it very well on the screen, but so pick my base door first, then drawer front. Different door styles. If I pick an A57 raised panel, notice I have different selections available from my drawer front. So what I pick from my door style drives which drawer front options are available. Now I want to go to my upper door style and pick the same door typically, although you can mix and match. We've had some recently where people have put veneer doors for their base cabinets and stainless steel doors for their upper cabinets. So you can specify that differently. Now, associated end panels is a feature we do not use in Cabinet Vision. I won't spend any time on it other than to tell you just ignore this. Our deco panels and appliance panels refer to these settings, so just completely disregard these always. You don't have to do anything with them. So once I've selected these three, my base, my drawer front, and my upper style. Now I can start picking my woods and profiles. So I'm going to come back here to the base profile to start with. And I'm going to pick other, and I have ditch details that are available here. I have a simplicity door, a Bainbridge door selected, so there's only 4 edge profiles available. If I picked a custom door, I would have a much bigger list here, but I'll just pick a number 1 for now. Edge profile, it allows you on most doors to select that and open up the list, but almost always there's only one option available here, a B profile, which is B in the Bainbridge. Bainbridge door is the same thing as if I scroll in my custom list, a B64. A Bainbridge is a 64 millimeter wide style and rail, as is a B64 raised panel. The only difference between these two is what options it allows you to have up here. In woods, it gives me the standard offering of simplicity woods, but if I pick a custom door that have the addition of reclaimed or historic woods here, I would also have some custom options, so I can pick something unusual. So by picking a custom door, I would get a bigger list of outer edge profiles, and I would also get a bigger list of raised panel profiles. But in simplicity, the selections are smaller. So I'm going to go ahead and pick an A panel here. Now I've picked these specifications for my base door only. I have to go do the same thing for my drawer front. So I want to make I'm on alder, number 1 edge. Now on a drawer front, options here. I picked an A panel for my base door. If I go back to my drawer front, I could pick an A panel. That's the panel that's on this raised panel. If I pick an A drawer panel, that's the exact same. It's the same panel cutter profile, but it's a smaller version of it. So most of the time, people pick the drawer panel for their drawers, but you don't have to. You can pick an A panel so that your drawers match. The only problem is that if you pick an A panel, you get a narrow top drawer. Sometimes the panel detail you select, a B panel is a good example. So again, it doesn't show here, but that profile is way inside. So if you have a short drawer front, that raised panel profile would become you wouldn't be able, that drawer front would just disappear on your job if you had a drawer that made your center panel too small. That profile wouldn't work. So typically I recommend it to use the drawer, but as you get used to the system, you'll see how to sort of manipulate things, and there are applications where you pick an A panel. So I'll pick a drawer panel for here. So now I pick my base and my drawer, but I also have to do the same thing for my upper cabinet. So it allows me to pick different profiles or woods for each of my base, my drawer, and my upper. Now, all of these at this point are set the same, with the exception of the A drawer panel. So now all I do is pick finish. So really long explanation of how to just get through the first setup of a room, but every time you start a new room, you will have to go through that process. It sounds really big because we're explaining everything, but it only takes a minute to do it once you get used to it every time you start a new room. So if you started a new room and you know or you want to work on the design layout, but you don't know the door style or color to start with, if you use window and you know these selections, you can always just hit next and finish, and it will bypass everything. It will just pick a default setting, but obviously you're not getting an accurate price for whatever they're doing. It's just allowing you access to be able to draw in the catalog. Let's see. So now I can see inside the catalog, but I still want to cover one concept first before we really get into placing things on walls. I'm going to go in here and pick one really quickly, just to illustrate this concept. Excuse me. A cabinet, an appliance, a piece of molding, anything that I see in cabinet vision is a three-dimensional object. Cabinet vision thinks in a certain way, and so it is best if you understand how it thinks so that you can understand why sometimes it'll yell at you and tell you can't place a cabinet in a certain place. It's best to understand why cabinet vision thinks the way it does, and that's what this is going to cover. Notice the dotted line around this cabinet. That is sort of a bounding box, a container, a three-dimensional container that holds parts and pieces that make up this cabinet. If I go to 3D of this cabinet, I can expand that cabinet. You see all the parts and pieces that make up this cabinet, even the edge banding, the hinges, the plates, the door holes, the hinge plate holes, toe kick and style rails and panels, the handles. Every little part of a cabinet is its own part, and all of those parts are contained within this 3D container, this line container. A couple of things are important to understand about these containers. Number one, it is a three-dimensional object, so it does not like two three-dimensional objects to occupy the same space. Sometimes in layout you might have a leg or a foot that shows up underneath this cabinet in the toe kick area. You and I know that that foot will fit under there, but Cabinet Vision sees that cabinet. Notice when I'm spinning in 3D, it sees that rectangular box. It doesn't see that toe kick recess. So it thinks of that as one three-dimensional box or cube. It does understand that there's space under that toe kick, so sometimes sliding a part under there can be a little problematic. There's a way to do it all, but you need to understand why it's thinking the way it's thinking. Another thing with cabinets is that it will also think of wall cabinets as a different thing than a base cabinet, for instance. If I take a wall cabinet and try to snap it over the top of this base cabinet, it's going to snap up to my soffit height that I set for this room. Remember, we set it at 24 inches. So wall cabinet snapping to that point, even though in plan view it looks like I'm right over the top of it. Obviously, we all know in elevation it's not. Now, a TWall cabinet system knows that it can't occupy the same space that either a base or a wall cabinet occupy. So it will butt it to the side of those. It's important to recognize that the system knows that that is a three-dimensional object. It's a container that holds multiple parts that make up this cabinet. Some containers might be a container that only holds one piece of wood that's a piece of crown molding. Sometimes a container holds a piece of steel that's a refrigerator or dishwasher or something, but often it's made up of multiple parts that make up that cabinet. So it doesn't sound very significant, but it really is. Doors and windows and any decorative elements you throw in are all containers containing parts and pieces in 3D. So one other important thing to know about cabinet boxes is this bending box that goes around it. Notice the little handles on all the sides of it. It's important to know what each of those handles mean. First we'll talk about is this one. That's your origin point. Origin point of a cabinet is always on the back, bottom, left side of that, or corner of that cabinet. So if I looked at that cabinet by itself in 3D, the origin point sits right here at the bottom corner of this cabinet. Handles along here. The center handle is just a move handle. If I click on that, it allows me to move it. Notice the little envelope shape also, that little dotted line envelope. If the back side of the wall, you'll see that envelope change. Then it can place on the back side of the wall. I'm going to move it back to the front side of the wall. So that's your move handle. The handles on the side or the front are resize handles. So I can click on that cat and stretch it in width, left or right, grow or shrink, same with the depth of that cabinet. So those handles there's a much more accurate way of doing that. I'll show you here in just a second though. But these handles do work. There are applications where you want to use those handles. This icon is a rotate icon. I almost never use this button, and I recommend that you really avoid it. There's some problems with it. You can rotate around your origin point is all that's for. The problem is that if I take another cabinet now and put a cabinet on the wall here, this cabinet that's on an angle, the system thinks that it's still takes up this same amount of space. So if I try to put a cabinet next to it here and butt it into this corner, for instance, it's going to take, and the adjacent cabinet here is going to be floating somewhere out in this area because it still thinks that this cabinet is back in this position. It doesn't know that it's rotated. You can see the rotate angle. I can set that back to 0 and be back flush there. So the container object. So now we cover how you manipulate this object. There's a couple of things you'll do with cabinets when you place them. If I just come out here and place it on a wall, I can resize, reposition, float it off the walls, float it up in elevation. I can change all of those kind of attributes on a cabinet. But let me show you first how to place a cabinet. There's 4 different ways you can place a cabinet on a wall. The first is graphically, just like what you've been seeing me here. If I open up my objects and go to Davis Millen Cabinet Catalog, and I'll cover the rest of this catalog later on, but for now we'll just stick with cabinets. And I'm going to come in here and grab a base cabinet, and I want a door combo, so a BD1. I can see down in the bottom corner what kind of a cabinet has a top drawer and 2 side-by-side drawers, so I'm just going to click on this cabinet and hold, drag it in my room, and let go. Now it gives me that an icon that I can snap to wherever I want, so I'm just going to click it right here, and it will place it on the wall. So that's the first way to place a cabinet. Another way is also graphical, but instead of finding it in the catalog and dragging and dropping it, this way requires me to know what the name of the cabinet is that I'm after. So I'm going to find this exact same. Actually, let's find a different cabinet. I'm going to right-click in the background and say Insert Object. Now it's going to ask me the name of the cabinet I want. In this case, I want a BD3, 3-drawer bank. It looks at my catalog and finds it, and that's now what I have here attached to my cursor. I can place it on a wall. Notice now over on my sidebar, after I place that cabinet, you see it browsed through the catalog and found that BD3 cabinet. So you can set that in the catalog that way too. But any cabinet can be added that way. I can insert a BSF, which is a base sink with a false front, and there it is. So once you've learned the nomenclature, it's very quick and easy to place cabinets on the wall. In the meantime, you can just come up in here and browse for that cabinet graphically and find which one you want, drag it out to your screen. So the first 2 ways, you have a drop and a right-click insert object to things on your drawings. Now, those 2 are the only ways to really show your cabinets in a room layout. There's 2 other ways, though, that would ghost entries or order entries. So if I'm on my Reports tab, we'll see the 3 cabinets I've placed on this wall. I can't really do anything to them other than select them at this point. However, if I go to Order Entry, now here's the 3rd way to select a cabinet. If I'm in the Order Entry mode, I can go to Davis Millen Cabinet, and the same way I did out in the room, I can browse through, find the cabinet I want, click and drag it out. And typically you want to bring it out to where this red triangle sits and drop it on that cell. This is just like a spreadsheet, but now I've got my cabinet added to my order. Notice the white colored icon here compared to the rest of them. This is why I call it a ghost item. It's an entry item only. If I go here to 3D, I only see the original 3 cabinets that I drew in here. I do not see this 4th cabinet. However, it is part of my order. It's been given a part number. It's part of my order. It will price. It will be factored if you get a ghost item in this list. So that's one way of doing it. So you can drop to order entry. Another way is just like from the plan or elevation view, the right-click insert object method. If I'm in the reports view and order entry, rather than right-click, though, here I can just type in what I want. I can just type in a BD1, and it through the catalog finds it, enters it in here. Now I can start changing the sizes of those cabinets or doing whatever I want to do with them. Again, it's a ghost item from this method. So those are the four ways of dropping a cabinet on your drawing. I'm going to delete these 2 ghost items. So I'm going to right-click on one of those and say delete. It's going to confirm that I want to delete it. Right click again here, delete. Yes, that's okay. So let's come out here back to my plan view. I want to talk about resizing and repositioning cabinets. A couple of different things we can do with sizing cabinets. I showed you before you can click on a handle and drag it to resize. Notice over on the left sidebar you see the width cell that's sort of highlighted yellow, changing with this. So I could, I guess, go to 30 inches. It's a little bit hard to do with your mouse sometimes, especially if you're trying to go to 29 and 13/16 or something. So what you can also do is just come over here and either click in that cell, or if I click on cabinet, notice highlighted yellow over here before I even click. If I just type 24 inches and then hit enter, it's going to ask me which way do I want to stretch this cabinet. I'm going to tell it to the left. So it's stretch cabinet to 24 inches to the left. If I told this now to go, let's say 36 inches, but I'm going to this one to the right, it says at me here. It says those are two 3D objects. They can't occupy the same space. So sorry, there's something in the way. You just have to say OK and select that thing. And I only have 5 inches I could have grown that cabinet by. So I know it's 29 inches, but just to re-illustrate this, I can say plus 5 inches in there and then extend it to the right. Oh, of course, now it yells at me. That's fantastic. If you ever get a problem like that where I can fit here, but it's giving me issue that way, here's another way to resize a cabinet. I can always click on this handle and click over to this cabinet. You don't want to do it right to the edge because that's not very accurate. Sometimes what you'll do is overlap the adjacent cabinet by an inch or two and click. There it resized to fit. So it'll snap to, and it can do it over here and snap, just overlap slightly. And this time asked me, do I want to shrink fit this item? Yes, let's do. So there it fits the gap. And I'm exactly 39 inches between those two cabinets. So that's the ways to resize a cabinet, either the bar parameters or dragging these handles. Now in the elevation view, I can do the same things. If I click on a cabinet, I have my bounding box selected. I can change the width of that cabinet. Again, say left or right. So I expand the right. I'll change the height of a cabinet. Let's put a wall cabinet in here. I'll right-click your object, W cabinet. It looks through and finds my W cabinet. Now I can click on this cabinet, and let's make it 38 inches wide. Or I put tall. Let's go back to 36. 48 inches wide, and I'm going to expand both ways on this one. Now, on the height of a wall cabinet, remember before I talked about the soffit height being where it snaps to? We know that you're going to have a certain height that your wall cabinets are going to end up being. In this case, I probably should have had a 30-inch soffit height rather than a 24 if I get a 54-inch clearance. What I want my clearance to be, though, I can do the math here. 120 minus the standard height of my wall cabinets, in this case 36 inches, minus my 54 inches, and that would give me my soffit height. If I can here, and let me delete this cabinet and start over on it, drag a new one out, so it's back to my soffit height. If I realize at this point, oh shoot, I put the wrong soffit height in, I can always click on this wall and change my soffit height right there. And it will move any cabinet, any upper cabinet that's on that wall that I have not overridden its height. Now, elevate, I can change if I want a staggered look, if I want a small cabinet up here above a range or a fridge or something, I can change its elevation manually or make it stick above the soffit height too. All of those things can be customized by a combination of your height or your elevation settings. Your depth is pretty obvious, is what it is. If I click on there, I can just change a cabinet to 30 inches deep. That sort of thing. So I can size cabinets using sidebar parameters or handles or a combination of both. Other parameters down here, the angle parameter is the same as if I were to grab this and spin it, which again I just recommend not using that feature at all. It just gets confusing. Outset is used quite regularly. If I want to outset a cabinet, say 6 inches from the wall, I can put outset number of 6. If I want to inset it, if I have a cutout in the wall and I want to go into that cabinet 3 inches, I can do that as well. Elevate the cabinets is self-explanatory as well. So whatever I want that elevation to be, I want that cabinet to hover 10 inches off the ground for whatever reason. Sometimes you have floating vanity cabinets. That's where that would come in handy. So no, I just deleted that cabinet. If I on a cabinet and then hit my delete button on my keyboard, it will get rid of the cabinet I've got selected. If I have multiple cabinets, I'm going to click on this cabinet and copy it and then just paste multiples next to it. To delete multiple cabinets. If I clicked on the wall and pushed delete, it would delete the wall and all cabinets attached to the wall. The other thing I can do is just highlight all cabinets, right click, and say delete, and get rid of everything at once. That's sizing of cabinets. Now positioning cabinets. Let's go in here and base cabinet out on the wall. Let's see. Go to my elevation view to show you this. If I click on a cabinet, you'll see a bunch more sidebar parameters on the side here. You've got your dimensions and your position that we already talked about, but clearances are how you position a cabinet within the room. So let me paste another cabinet here next to it. So if I click on that, we can see here by the dimensions we've got 22 inches between them, but I can also see here that it's 22 inches between them. It's all telling me I have 136 and 7/16 to the side to where there's clearance on the side of the cabinet. If I click on this cabinet and then change my left clearance to 0, it will butt that cabinet into the adjacent cabinet. Same thing when if I'm at 0 on the right. Let's say I want to move this into the corner. This is a concept that gets a little bit hard to understand why cabinet vision does what it does. If you look here, just below clearance, we have end position. You'll notice I'm 50 inches from the wall. Why is there a 26 right there is the question. The reason it does that is it sees this wall as a potential for other cabinets to be attached to it. So it knows if I have another 24-inch cabinet attached to this wall, I only have 6 inches that I can move that over. So if I say 0 on that left clearance, it moves it over exactly to the face of this cabinet. If I'm going to delete that, if I want to go actually into the corner, I will use my end position, my clearance position. Another thing you can do with positioning information is the center position. For instance, if I set 0, and let me go back to milliliters because I've got a fraction in there. This will be easier in millimeters. I'm going to take that and again do math and say divide by 2. Center me on that wall. So now my center position, center cabinet is equal on both sides. So you can do that how you like. The other thing you can center by is end position. Same thing here. I can say I've got that much clearance, divide by 2 on my end position, and it has the same end result. So, positioning of cabinets. All right. Any at this point? I don't see anything. At the end of the webinar, we'll go ahead and open it up for questions. I'll turn microphones back on and let everybody listen and ask questions however you'd like then as well. So now we know how to place cabinets. So now I want to give you a basic rundown of the catalog and the objects that are in there. So you see different folder within this. They look like a little book icon. There are different chapters in the book. When the printed catalog comes to you, it will have the exact sections in it as different chapters or sections. The cabinets section, just what it sounds like. There's a couple of categories in here we haven't talked about. Your base, your wall, and your talls are pretty pretty easy. Your desk and pencil cabinets, they tend to be your desk cabinets. There's a few drawer stacks in here, or door drawer combo cabinets. They are shorter and shallower usually. Pencil drawers are just floating pencil drawer cabinets. Your washstand cabinets are confusing to some people. It looks like a standard sink base, but notice no toe kick on it. Washstand cabinets are for your floating vanity type layouts. You can change elevation or the height, depth, width, any of those things, but they come to default with no toe kick attached to them and floating on the wall. Bench cabinets, there's only a couple of them in here, just 6 drawers in them. Basically a small one-drawer base cabinet. The other one's the same thing, but with a side-by-side drawer. Now, shaped cabinets, there aren't any of these in here yet, but as these get developed, now we have the capability of saving a dome top or a bowed front cabinet or an angle wedge-shaped cabinet as standard items in the catalog. And so you'll be able to, if somebody else has done that, you'll be able to drag those cabinets in and use what other people have done. So this will just come as we do periodic catalog updates. Basics on the cabinets. Fillers, options that we've done in version 8 now. Most of you have seen this, but wood options or veneer. You want to use the veneer options only if you have veneer slab doors. Otherwise, use solid wood filler options. Within the fillers, and the options will be the same whether you're in solid wood or under veneer. Solid wood for now. Fillers, you've got a flat filler or styled filler. Most of the difference, your flat case depth filler versus a styled or overlay filler. You can drag them on independently as a single item, a flat filler by itself or a styled filler by itself, or you can drag on a flat filler, styled filler combo, and almost always this is what people use. So if I come in here, you've got 3 options, a base, a wall, and a tall. A base filler. If I go on the cabinet and look at it individually, you'll notice 2 parts in this cabinet. The first one is your styled filler, the back one is your flat filler. Let me show how those are typically used. I'm going to take this and butt it into the sidewall, and then I'm going to insert a BDT cabinet next to it. Just give that cabinet some width. So now if I look at this in plan view, you'll notice the flat filler is back on the case depth. The stub filler is out on the door depth. The idea is to make this look like an overlay filler, a door that dives into the wall that then gives your installer some scribe room. Note that there's a square edge profile on this filler, tiled filler. This is a new feature in 8. It comes in always as a default with the square edge, and if double click on this cabinet and go to my section view, and we'll cover this more probably tomorrow, but if I go to the section view of this cabinet and click on this face of this filler, I can turn off edge profiles. In this, I'm scribing into the wall on the left, so I could turn off the edge detail on the left. I could also change the edge detail. In this case, the doors were a number 1, so I'm going to pick a number 1 edge detail on this. So it rechecked the left here when I went to second door, so I'm going to uncheck left and then hit OK. Now if I look at this object, you'll see that edge profile around the top, the right side, and the bottom edges of that filler. So now I go back out here in the room view. Now I see that profile. So for an order, that's what we'd want you to do, is tell us which of those 4 edges you want the profile on. Again, the default is that all 4 of them are profiled. If you do not go in and specify that edge profile, this number profile that I put on, we're going to default to the door profile. So if you have something specific, make sure and enter that on that filler. Otherwise, it will default to it. A lot of people like to show that, though. So in that case, it's to your advantage to go ahead and just put it in anyway. So that flat filler, styled filler combo. Back into the fillers. If I go to a blind corner filler, it's very similar to a flat filler, styled filler combo, except for it's made for blind corner cabinets. So if a blind corner cabinet, let me delete these out of the way. My blind corner cabinet were on this wall. Might want a styled filler. Let's position this a little better here. So my blind corner, if I have an actual blind corner cabinet in here that came back this way and the door is accessed right here, this filler includes a flat filler and 2 overlay fillers. So that's how those are used. And the thing goes for putting edge profiles on a blind corner filler. So there's back up in here into the, notice when I drill down in the catalog and I want to go back up, I can either go back one step at a time like that, or I can just click back on the main catalog. One other thing about this main catalog here is if I want to access the room properties again, change the wood or door style, 2 ways I can do that. I can either, at the room button, if you notice there's 2 parts to this button, the bottom half will have our catalog. That brings this window up. I'll hit here, or I can come here and right-click on our catalog there, and that brings it up. So either works. Fillers, assemblies and components are a lot of the miscellaneous decorative pieces, your box columns, your shelves, floating box shelves, corbels, furniture bases, valances, decorative onlays, all of those kinds of things. And I'm not going to spend any time in this training going over each of these. Every one of these is kind of unique, and each one has its own sort of set of rules that it follows. So it takes a little bit of playing around, and later on we can do a more advanced sort of training that covers those assemblies. Molding is a little bit of a unique category, molding and countertops both. Note back out of our catalog, if I go back to the main tops and mold right here. These buttons here are only for rendering your countertops or your molding. They do not put the molding or the countertops on your order. In order to draw molding on my job, I would visually see it in plan or elevation or 3D views, but in my report view, I would not see any cabinets on this list, no molding pieces added. So if I had a job with several cabinets on it, and I'll just place a couple out here. So I go to my reports view. If I don't see a part number on it and an item listed here, it's not part of my order, it's not pricing, it's not going to be built. Typically what we do with molding is you can use this molding and countertops button to draw your molding or your countertops, and we'll cover those probably the 3rd day of training. But if I want to add it to my order, I always add molding as a ghost item. So I go to my order entry, find a molding category, and I'm going to find crown molding, for instance, and I want crown 11, and I'm going to drag it out onto my order. I can tell it out here a footage, so if I want, this is a 10-foot length of it, let me go to inches. I can tell it I want 150 times 5, so I want 5 10-footers. There's 600 inches worth. Or I can tell it to do a quantity of 5. Either up to you. I recommend changing the quantity. It's easier to deal with. That's all your molding, your toe kick, your crown molding, your crown base, your gap and case molding, your light balance, all of those things are selected through this molding button, and in every one of these cases you're just going to drag it out as a line item, ghost item. So that's molding. Caps are the same sort of way. In Cabinet Vision, if I use this countertops button, I can place countertops out on my cabinets. Again, that's only for rendering. This is for tops that granite or solid surface, marble, plastic laminate, whatever you're putting on for countertops on the job, just for rendering. If it's a countertop that we're actually building, which in most cases are just standard wood tops, veneer tops, or butcher block tops, those are all entered also as ghost items. I go to the countertops button here. I can put in different types of tops in here and drag these out as a ghost item. You'll notice it front, left, back, right. That's which edges have profiles on them. So that's countertops. Doors and echoes. Let me come back to elevation view to show you this. If I want to put on an appliance deco, say a dishwasher deco next to these base cabinets, if I to my doors and windows, I'd have several options. I could put on a standard deco like this. size it whatever size I want it to be, and then set it from the wall 4 inches. Looks like I need to be whatever my height is and my elevation, so I can position that correctly and make it the right size that dishwasher calls for. So that's one way of doing a dishwasher deco. Notice on here the deco B means it's a base cabinet deco. If I go back to my decos, I'll have wall decos and tall decos. The L and R are right or left side applications. If I drag out a deco right, it would be to go on the right side of a cabinet. A deco left would go on the left side of a cabinet. Okay. So dishwasher application. Option besides just plain decos, if I go back up one step, I can go down to appliances with decos, dishwashers, and we'll pick one that is a deco, and this is B cabinet. It's similar to this B cabinet, meaning a full height door. So if I drag that out, there's a dishwasher with a full height door on it. This one would be a full height door with a front above it. Your different options there for putting in appliances. They're nice because it shows the handle on them, but also is already outset. It shows this sort of metal block back in here that represents the dishwasher. So those ones are nice options if you're putting panels on decos or panels on appliances. I'm going to delete everything I've got in here then. Your doors and decos, there are options to do standard doors if you just have loose doors you're ordering on a three-face job. Also door samples, if you need to order a door sample, you can put it out here and customize that door sample and send us the Cabinet Vision file. That works just fine. Delete that. Flat panels, veneer, melamine, or MDF panels. All of these operate similarly. If I go to veneer, say two-sided, now I have several options here. Vertical grain, horizontal, flat orientation, or flat side. Let me drag one of each of these out. Okay, so these two look the same, and these two look the same. The difference is the grain direction. We'll see how well this renders on your screen here. Nope, not at all. Show better than others, but because it is a base vertical grain, grains are up and down, base horizontal grain. FP2 flat. FP2, by the way, means finished two sides, flat panel, two-sided finish. So a flat application would mean on the, if I can at the top and bottom of these shelves that I've got here, grains running this way on this one it would be running this direction. So that's the difference in all the flat panels. You all have, just like deco panels, if I go to a vertical grain, I've got a base vertical, base left vertical. If I want a side panel on the end of a run of cabinets or end of a fridge opening or whatever I'm using that for, I can put a left or a right side application on those as well. One other thing too, if you look at one of these flat panels, if I click on one, again, sidebar is context sensitive. In this case, there's additional sidebar attributes, so I can tell it which edges to edge band. I want to turn off the edge banding on the bottom of this one, and you see that turn off. So now we know to not edge band in that bottom. If for whatever reason you don't want edge banding on one surface, you can specify that. So that's flat panels. Go back here. Accessories and wildcards are two really commonly used things. Both of them require an object already to be out here. So let me drag a few cabinets out here to show you this. I'll put a base here. Let me drag out one of these two, a door mount accessory cabinet. Let's do a steel door. Make it 18 inches wide. Let's use that one as our example. What I'm going to do to place an accessory, and we'll talk about this a little more tomorrow. Right now we're on the room level. I can see the whole room. I'm going to double-click that cabinet to go to the cabinet level. Now I isolated this one cabinet. I can spin it on in 3D, look at it in any of these views. Accessory, typically I'm going to want to go here to the cabinet level, to my accessories, and find whatever I want to put in. In this case, let's put in a trash bin. And I'll go rev shelf, last one in. I'm just going to position it down here somewhat where I want it to be. I could leave it like that. It would be just fine. If I put it exactly where it's at, I can figure out, I can do the math. The cabinet's 18 inches wide. The trash pull-out says it's 15 inches wide. That's the difference of 3 inches, so I have an inch and a half on the side. I can center it. There's also ways we can do, if I just place it in here and that cabinet or that bin is on the side of it and I don't want to take the time to do the math in my head, long day, so I can't do the math in my head. So what I'm going to do is select that trash bin, and here on my left and right position, rather than do the math in my head, I'm going to do it right here in this cell. So I'm going to say 18 inches is the width of my cabinet, divided by 2 gives me the center of that cabinet. Then I subtract half of width of the trash pullout, which is 15 divided by 2. And if I hit enter, that also. So I had a divide and a subtract there in the same formula. So just kind of show you how much stuff you can do in one of those formulas. So maybe I see that trash bin in 3D, or in my elevation view. If I go to fill mode, I'm not going to see it back there because it's not transparent anymore. And the same with my three-dimensional mode. But if I have it in wireframe, I can still see that. For reports view, however, you'd see that as a subassembly, item 2.1 of item number 2. So it mirrors it with that one. Another way to place an accessory in a cabinet is a ghost on here. I can just come to that same exact trash bin. If I don't see it in the drawing, I can just click on that and drag it out and drop it on top of that cabinet. Notice I have 2 trash bins on there, 2.1 and 2.2. So my ghost on the one I just dragged on was 2.2. So that gives you an idea on different accessories. Every accessory is different. They all have different rules that apply to them, different things you can get away with. The nice thing about putting them on graphically is I can see if that trash cabinet fits in this cabinet. I don't order something that's bigger than the cabinet is, for instance. So I'm delete that cabinet. So that's accessories. Let's use this cabinet to show you wild cards. Wild cards are a real powerful part of our catalog. If you go to X, I'm going to go to wild cards, and wild cards are organized by what part of the cabinet you want to make a change to. So, for instance, toe kick. If I cabinet toe kick, I'm going to adjust the toe kick height of this cabinet. Let's put on, these are in millimeters, by the way, so 30 inch and a half, 76, 3 inches. If I do it custom, though, let's drag a custom toe kick height out on this cabinet. So I've just clicked here, hold, and drag out onto my cabinet, and let go on top of that cabinet. It doesn't look like anything happened, right? If I go to my reports view, I see that I have a toe kick height custom on item number 1 as a subassembly, item 1.1. If I go back here to my elevation view and click on this cabinet, there's nothing really that's changed. What happens is when I drop a wildcard on that cabinet, this cabinet has had no reason to rebuild or sort of rethink how it's constructed. In order to make it fresh, to recognize this toe kick height that we've added on it, if I click on that cabinet and hit my enter key 2 times, like a double click on my enter, it looks like anything happened. The reason it didn't is because the default for a custom toe height comes in as exactly what our standard toe height is. But notice now I have this sidebar parameter. I didn't have that before. That double clicking enter caused this parameter to show up. So now I can type in whatever toe kick height I want, and the cabinet changes immediately. If I have, I'm going to put one of the wildcards. Let's put a toe kick height 76 down here on my favorites menu. So it's that star icon. If I then go back to my cabinets and I drag a new cabinet out here, and I go and take favorites, this toe kick height 76, and drag it up on this cabinet. Same concept there. Item number 2, toe kick 76. Nothing's changed on the cabinet unless I hit enter 2 times. Now, this one is not a custom, so it's not going to add a sidebar parameter. In this case, it knows what height to do it already because the wildcard dictates that. So if I hit enter 2 times, there. It's the 3-inch toe kick height. can do the same thing with other wild cards. Let's go again to toe kick, toe recess. I'm going to recess the left side. Let's go 152, a 6-inch, for whatever reason we want to do that. And then enter 2 times, it recesses that toe kick by whatever distance I told it to. I can do the same thing with a custom. Let's recess the left toe custom on this cabinet. Again, nothing happens. If I hit enter 2 times, it just recessed it. But now, again, over here, now I have a new sidebar parameter. Left toe recess 3. Let's call it 10, whatever we want to call it. Doesn't really matter. So wildcards do all kinds of things to your cabinets. You can adjust toe kick or recesses. You can delete your top or bottom. You can draw solid wood edges on your adjustable shelves. If I go to adjustable shelves, for instance, and I say solid wood edges, I want to drag out solid wood edges on my shelves there. Again, nothing happens. If I click this cabinet, remember over here I have 2 sidebar attributes currently, but I dropped a new wildcard on there. If I hit enter twice, a new sidebar attribute shows up. And also see here a little drop down, the little shelf got bigger. If I change this to 3 inches, you see that shelf get bigger. So if I go to this cabinet level, and we'll show you this more tomorrow, but if I go to this view, I can open my doors. And let's go to 3D view, and now I see those big drop shelf edges that I put on those shelves. I see my recessed toe. All the wild cards I put on this cabinet are there. So wild cards are super powerful for tweaking things. Almost always there's something you can, if you need to tweak cabinet, change a cabinet, there's a wild card to do what you're after. You can find it, just call us, and we'll direct you the right way on that one. So that's cards then. Those 2 items on here are very, very similar, but different in a couple of distinct. If I go to factory quotes and base factory quote, the number on this FQ3 or an FQ10, those are pricing factors. And you don't know what, if you've got a really custom hood, for instance, you don't know what to put in there. I would probably come in and grab a wall, an upper factory quote, and you're going to have to send the drawing of that hood to us, and we're going to take a look at it and say, that looks like about a factory quote 10 or a 12 or whatever we decide it is. So I'm going to take a factory quote 10, drag it out here on the wall. Notice I've got my name of it here, but there's no objects here at all. The container, that container had no parts in it. I'm in 3D here, but there's no parts contained in that cabinet. What we do in a factory quote typically is we would come in and add new parts and pieces to make that custom hood, whatever it is. Then the FQ10 dictates price of that part. So that's a factory quote. The difference between a factory quote and a subassembly is going to look exactly the same. It's just an empty container, nothing in it. The difference here is that sometimes, remember before I talked about there being if we wanted a butt foot or something under the cabinet, and I want to order that bun foot, but it keeps yelling at me, telling me I can't put that bun foot there. I can go to a subassembly container and do something like this, where I put a cabinet in this subassembly container. I picked the wrong kind of cabinet here, but anyway, if I pick a leg and foot, and I put a, let's see, turn feet, and we'll just put a leg under here, and I just plop it anywhere. A sub-container allows you to make kind of a conglomeration of multiple parts or assemblies. The advantage here is it allows you to position things that otherwise might be very difficult to position. The advantage is that this cabinet and this foot have the exact same part number. They're not going to attach to each other. We haven't. If you wanted them attached, that's more of a factory quote kind of thing, so that we can add the cost of attaching those 2 items together and shipping as one unit. But if you're just trying to position something that's being difficult to position, you can use a subassembly container to do that. If I delete that subassembly container, note the leg is sticking out the bottom of the dotted line. That's still part of this subassembly assembly container. If I hit delete, it gets rid of both of them. So that is the main rundown of the catalog, and we're just about out of time here anyway. Let's see, anything that we've forgotten to cover here. Just one other concept we need to go over. Where to start on a job. The rule of thumb I give people is try to pick your installer. Where's your installer going to start? An installer typically will want to start at a corner cabinet and work out from it, or from an appliance cabinet and work away from that, or whatever. The same thing goes here. What I do when I lay out a job is I will typically draw my walls in. Then we've spent all this time in Davis Mill and Cabinet catalog. You'll have to play around in it a little bit. This appliances and structural catalog has got a lot of stuff in it. If I come in here and go to structural doors and windows, I can grab a door. On that door, I can grab whatever. Let's do a let swing in. It doesn't matter. Or I put it to swing out, I guess. On that door, then we can resize that door however we want. Let me go to the elevation view and look at that door. I can make it a 30-inch wide door, 9 tall, whatever I want to do on it. I can also change. There's some additional sidebar attributes here on doors and windows. Now, we're not making this door. This is more just for your rendering. But I've in some styles here that you can do. As I change this number, you'll see the door style itself change. So you have different types of doors you can render for applications. You can also change the casing. Right now I've just got a standard mitered casing. I can do a sort of mission style header like that. I can do plinths and rosettes. Now notice when I do this, there's also additional, if I go back to casing type number 1, I can change the casing width of this cabinet, or this door. If I change it to casing type number 2, now I have an additional one. I can do casing width, but I can also do the header width and make it, say, 9 inches. So I can customize the look of this. If I go casing type number 3, here I can do things like the plinth width, so it changes my casing. I can change the reveal of the molding. Right now it's at 5/16, but let's say I want to go a 1-inch reveal. I can change that relationship of the casing to the plinths or the rosettes. I change the height of the plinths. Let's call them, for whatever, 14 inches high. I can make them 3 inches high. I can do whatever I want to do with them. So that's doors. Same thing on windows. If I go to a window, I've got different options here in the windows, but if I drag a window on, the exact same casing types apply here and the same sidebar attributes. So you can customize windows and doors to do that. So when I do a layout, I'll go through and put my walls in, and then I'll put my window in and my doors. And I've got my room layout here in 3D. I can go to my plan, my elevation view, and start placing cabinets in my room. And usually I'll put my corner cabinets in and center sink cabinet over my window and place my appliance cabinets, something like that. And then I fill in between those cabinets. There are all the rules in cabinet vision. There are lots of rules in cabinet vision. All of them can be bent or broken at different times. This is one of those times. If I want to put, I typically on a kitchen layout, I'll put my fillers in at the very end. On a little bathroom layout like this, I might end and put my fillers in first. For instance, I'll come in here and pick a combo filler, and let's pick base flat filler, styled filler combos. I'm going to right-click and copy that one over to here. Let me change my walls to wall ends also, since we want to do that as often as we can. Now, on a filler, if I only want 1 inch of it to show, but I want another inch worth of scribe, I can make that for 2 inches wide, for instance. Let's make this one 2 inches wide. Now I take that filler and my end position. If I just go like that, I'm 2 inches wide. But if I do a -1 on there, I've inset filler into the wall, So now for your rendering it's correct, but also for your pricing it has the correct size, and for manufacturing it has the right size that you really want it to be. Don't just put in a 1-inch filler and to the wall like that and it could have scribe automatically included in it, because it won't. We're going to build it exactly the size you say on here. So if I set that at 2 and then I say a -1 inset, then this is a scenario where I do place my fillers first, because it's much easier to place those fillers and inset them in the walls, and then now I can grab my cabinets and start grabbing cabinets and dropping them in the middle of like this. Now here I'll make these whatever size I want to make them. And let's drag a drawer here in the middle. I'm going to overlap the cabinet on the left to place it, and I'm going to click on that cabinet and stretch to fill the gap. Overlap slightly. Yes, I want to shrink to fit. And there's my room layout. So it goes pretty quickly once you learn how to place those fillers and cabinets and know what you're looking for. And your scribe built into it. So in this case, I would want, if this were just a little built-in cabinet somewhere in the house, I would come here to my reports and my order entry. In this case, there's no cabinet, so I don't need crown molding. But I could do my molding. You can find it, molding, toe kick. We'll drag our toe skin out, and I don't know how many we need here. Let's say we need 2 sticks of it. And I put a wood top in here already, so let's go ahead and use it. So now we're going to, on this, I've got 1 inch of filler on each side, plus a 3-inch base cabinet, plus a 30-inch base, plus a 29 and 7/8. So there's my wood top to go over the top of this, and the room would be complete and ready to order at this point. So it looks like we're just a little over time, so we'll stop at this point for today, and we'll go ahead and I'm going to unmute the microphone so we can take questions and go over anything for whatever time anybody wants to here.